I have no enemies. When Thorfinn uttered these words at the end of season 2 of Vinland Saga, it is the payoff of all the suffering he endured to reach this enlightenment. This isn't a story about an anime protagonist that uses the power of friendship to conquer some all-encompassing threat to the universe. This is a story about a man coming to terms with himself and ultimately becoming the person he chooses to be. This is a massive change in his behavior from the previous season. This foundational shift in Thorfinn's belief system is one of the main reasons why I love Vinland Saga so much. In the beginning of season 2, Thorfinn is a broken man with no purpose in life, but grows into something so much more. Quick note before we get into this, I'm not going to cover any story beats that deeply. If you want to understand what's happening in the greater story, go watch Vinland Saga yourself and come back here. Also, it should be implied, but there will be some spoilers for Vinland Saga. Okay, good, got it? All right, everybody good? All right, let's get into this. Thorfinn's father was the true definition of a stoic. After fighting in so many wars and killing so many people, he came to the realization that he didn't believe in fighting in other people's battles anymore. This shift in motivation isn't really clarified until later in season 1 during a flashback, when we find out that his wife is pregnant with his first child. Not Thorfinn. Thorfinn has an older sister. This major life change shifted his priorities from being a warrior to being a father. And on top of being a father that his wife and future family can be proud of. That's why in the beginning of the show, we see him learning trades like blacksmithing and farming, because those are the kinds of skills he wants to pass down. He didn't want to continue to perpetuate a cycle of violence and suffering any longer. He understood his actions had consequences. So when the Jomsvikings finally find him after years of being missing, they wanted him to return to the battlefield. They essentially force his hand by threatening the things that are important to him now, his family, and his new life that he had built for himself. He didn't rage against the inevitable. He didn't run away again. He processed his choices and reluctantly agreed to return to a life of war. He also knew that he was probably walking to his death. As he leaves the village, Thorfinn becomes a stowaway and is now forced into the life Thors was trying so hard to prevent. Thorfinn watches his father die at the hands of Askeladd, and this changed him. It set him on this blood-soaked path of revenge. This path would see him change so dramatically, he didn't even recognize himself at the end. The choices he made along the way were so counterintuitive to the message his father tried to portray. He would even have dreams of his father, trying to tell him to just let it go. He knew subconsciously that this path is not what Thors wanted his son to inherit. The cycle of violence and rage. Thors wanted Thorfinn to practice kindness, yes, but more importantly, he wanted him to practice control. Control over your emotions. Control over your actions. This mastery is a key foundation in Stoicism. When someone has wronged you, you have a choice. You can choose to seek retribution. What do you ultimately gain from that? Pride? Is your pride or honor worth perpetuating the cycle of violence and torment? Thorfinn believed for the first season that, yes, the gain is worth the cost. Following Askeladd from battlefield to battlefield, fighting another man's war just for the chance at his revenge. Not even a guaranteed outcome, just a simple chance. This chance also represents another piece of Thorfinn's twisted logic. If he wanted his revenge, he could have killed Askeladd in his sleep, or ambushed him during some battle they were fighting in. Thorfinn believed that the right thing to do is to kill Askeladd in a duel. This twisted sense of honor keeps Thorfinn stuck in this loop. Every time he duels Askeladd, he's going up against an opponent with much more experience in all facets of combat. Askeladd is not only a better swordsman than Thorfinn, but also better at emotionally manipulating him, using emotional warfare to his benefit. He's able to use Thorfinn's rage against him, which he even points out to Thorfinn multiple times throughout the story. If Thorfinn was able to control himself, the duels would probably end in a different outcome. But that's ultimately not the point anyway. The cycle itself is the problem. Thorfinn had a choice to let go, realize his father was still dead no matter if he kills Askeladd or not. His rage becomes all-consuming to the point of irrationality, to the point that he was participating in the pillaging of innocent farmers and commoners, all for the ambition of a man he hates. His need to kill Askeladd became the only meaning in his life, or at least he dubbed it as the only thing that gave him meaning. I've learned a lot about my life over the years. One of the most important epiphanies I've discovered is to never make your meaning in life external. What do I mean by that? Well, never make the meaning of your life something you can't control. Because what happens when that thing leaves? When it's gone, taken from you, whatever it is, your meaning for existence crumbles along with it. That's exactly what happens to Thorfinn. This all comes to a head when Askeladd dies, and consequently, Thorfinn's meaning for existence along with him. He even cries over Askeladd in his final moments. Partially, I think, because he knew he was never going to be able to get his vengeance, but also because Askeladd had become something of a mentor to him. The relationship is so complicated because Askeladd was there during important developmental stages in Thorfinn's life. By the time season 2 rolls around, Thorfinn had just given up on existing. But little did he understand, his journey of self-discovery was just beginning. After Thorfinn is sold into slavery, he just gave up. Like I said earlier, his whole meaning of existence was just taken from him in an instant. The first time we see Thorfinn again, you can see the despair, and not just his face, but his entire body language. His first interaction with Einar feels so awkward, and you begin to realize that he has no social skills whatsoever. His life has been nothing but constant war and suffering. Any positive childhood memories he formed are buried under trauma and restless nights. Once Einar is introduced, however, something fundamentally shifts in him. This genuine connection with another human being forces him to look inward. Einar isn't perfect either, but his passion for life and freedom gives Thorfinn a reason to care again, a reason to exist, a reason to be. Through this connection, he's able to process a lot of his trauma from being a child soldier and self-actualize what his father had actually been trying to teach him. This growth culminates in a nightmare that Thorfinn has that is really, I think, a turning point for him. After being knocked out by Ketil's retainer, it was during a fight that him and Einar were having with them. Once again, if you want to know what happens, go watch Vinland Saga. But when he gets knocked out, he starts to have a dream, and this dream opens strangely calm. He wakes under a tree. The land is green and peaceful. I think we're supposed to assume that he's in Vinland, which is just what the Vikings called North America, so like Canada and basically Canada. As he gets up from under the tree, he sees Thor's, and he approaches him, telling him about this weird, crazy dream he was having, which is just his reality as we know. But as he starts getting closer to Thor's, he smells blood.
血の匂いがする。え？誰を殺した？その剣で。
This sudden shift, I think, is a representation of Thorfinn's mind, yes, but also a narrative theme that this show uses a lot. His father was taken from him suddenly, his revenge stolen from him unexpectedly, his freedom gone in an instant, the lives he abruptly ended along the way, all represent how choices have consequences. And he carries that weight as a burden. As Thorfinn catches the lifeless body of Einar, the scene shifts again to Thor's telling Thorfinn he still had so much he wanted to teach him, and he apologizes for leaving him alone in a world he wasn't clearly ready for. As Thorfinn tries to chase his father, a corpse grabs him from the ground and prevents him from moving. Thors reassures him that Thorfinn understands now. Thorfinn doesn't have any enemies, but more importantly, no one has any enemies. It goes back to that choice. If someone wrongs you, you have a choice also. As Thorfinn is being dragged into the abyss by the people he killed, Thor tries again and again to convey the message that there is always an alternative to hurting others. As the knife drops from Thor's hand and hits the ground, Thorfinn just falls into a pit of his own self-hatred and despair. Right as he's about to fall completely through the pit, he catches himself at the edge and looks down to see an endless battle between skeletons and corpses. It's quite a grueling moment. This moment is a visual representation of his trauma, but also a representation of what is wrong with the warrior philosophy. As ghouls are cutting each other down, they are laughing, reveling in the slaughter of their enemies, reveling in their own hubris and pride. As Thorfinn is hanging there, we see Askeladd again, and he tells him, in this place, everyone is your enemy. The complete opposite of what Thors was trying to teach him.
究極の戦争状態だ。勝敗はない。終わりもない。ここじゃ自分以外は全員敵なのさ。
自分以外全員敵。
覚えてるか、ドルフィン。お前もかつてはこの世界の住人だった。
And when Thorfinn was engulfed in the flames of war, this is where his mind was, in this place, where everyone is your enemy. And in order to escape, he became empty. This happens when he becomes a slave. He becomes an empty shell of his former self. But through that hollowing, he's able to kind of mentally escape that hell. Thorfinn becoming a slave was, ironically, one of the best things that could have happened to him. He was removed from war and luckily sold to a kind master. This gave him the distance required to heal, even if it didn't appear that way at first. He was once burdened with the idea of being a warrior, burdened with pride to fulfill a self-imposed obligation to his father, too blind to see the truth, too angry to question if this was even the right path. As Thorfinn is holding onto this edge, a tower of bodies start reaching up to him. He instinctively kicks out of fear, and Askeladd scolds him in his sarcastic way and tells him to take a better look. They are the people Thorfinn killed, and maybe instead of dodging responsibility, he should lend an ear to their complaints, as he called them. Thorfinn stares at the corpse closest to him, and it just begins to weep. This moment, Thorfinn finally understands what it means to move forward. Climb his way back up from the darkness, even with the dead grasping onto him. Not because it's easy to do, but because it's the only thing he can do. That is Thorfinn's true battle. Not the war someone else wanted him to fight, not the vengeance his father never asked for. To live in spite of those things. To live a life with no unnecessary violence. To live a life with no enemies. Waking up, Thorfinn picks Einar up off the ground and they start walking back to their sleeping area. I say sleeping area because it's just a barn, but I digress. Thorfinn begins to have an emotional moment, staring at his hands and realizing how many people he's hurt with them. And he states he will never hurt anyone again. This is another important shift in his mindset that I kind of wanted to take a moment and talk about. His grief and regret sends Thorfinn to the complete opposite side of the spectrum of violence. It brings me back to the proverb, violence is never the answer. However, what most people don't understand about this proverb is that there are two parts to this statement. The true proverb is, violence is never the answer, until it is the only answer. This black and white mentality Thorfinn has adopted will be challenged by his relationship with Snake. When everything that happens with Arnheid and her husband Garder comes to a head, Thorfinn is left with a choice. Does he surrender to Snake, knowing full well he will just kill Garder? Or does he fight, defying his pacifist ideology? This fork in the road tests him. Thorfinn choosing to fight Snake is not him choosing violence for the sake of violence, but to defend someone he cares about. Ironically, this time he chooses to fight again is against someone he also cares about. Him and Snake had formed a relationship through this season, so it wasn't an easy choice to make, even if it wasn't someone he knew. Right? But it's even harder because he knows Snake. This emotionally complex interaction has a much deeper meaning than initially presented. Life is rarely black and white. We like to think it is because it makes situations easier to compartmentalize. Trust me, one of my main psychological flaws is this black and white thinking. It has taken me a long time, and I still struggle with it even now to realize that life is a series of grays most of the time. This gray area of violence is hard for Thorfinn to grasp, but he also understands that it is necessary. Sometimes, violence is the only answer. Knowing when it is and isn't is the challenge. By the end of the fight, Snake kills Garder, effectively eliminating their reason to continue. We see real growth from Thorfinn here. His reason for fighting was to defend Garder, but he's dead now. Instead of flying into a rage like he would have previously, he understands that continuing to fight would just be senseless. This distinction, this control, is the true warrior philosophy his father had been preaching. There's even a moment when Arnheid dies later on in the show from a beating she received from Kettle due to the whole Garter situation. And Einar just snaps. And Thorfinn is trying so hard to stop his friend from killing Kettle, he has to intervene by basically punching him in the face to snap him out of his bloodlust, using violence as a tool, but for good reasons. He tells him that killing Kettle won't quell his rage and will just continue the cycle of hate. He says another powerful quote in this moment.
エイナル、お前の怒りは旦那を殺したって収まりはしない。怒りが怒りを呼んで次々に人が死ぬだけだ。俺はずっとその地獄の中にいた。頼む、エイナル、俺と同じ呪いになんかかからないでくれ。
This powerful moment is a result of Thorfinn not only embracing his father's philosophy, but attempting to pass it on to others. Instead of fighting more, they both just weep together. An emotional scene, to be sure. Confronting Canute brings Thorfinn full circle. As the battle between Kettle and the Jom's Viking reaches a head, Thorfinn wants to try and solve this conflict diplomatically. Leif looks at the man Thorfinn has become and realizes why he must do this. Thorfinn even tells him that he estimated Canute only has 100 men, so he should be able to make it back alive if the worst case scenario were to pan out. The sentence is quick and subtle, but has a powerful connotation to it. He doesn't plan on dying, and will fight if he absolutely has to. Leif relents and understands that this isn't the same self-destructive Thorfinn that was chasing Askeladd all those years ago. Thorfinn doesn't have to do this either. He could have left with Leif and returned home. His freedom was not only earned, but well justified. He tells Leif that he will return, that he actually has something to live for now. But the more noble option was to at least try and prevent more senseless deaths. Just a quick note, quick blurb real quick. Surround yourself with friends like Leif. Leif promised Thors that he would get Thorfinn back to Iceland and spent the next 15 years chasing any rumor across the world about a small blonde-haired boy killing his way through battlefields. That, my friends, is some dedication. Why is Thorfinn going so far for Ketil's farm? It goes back to what I was saying earlier about how the farm had changed him. He even goes as far to say that he's glad he came to the farm. But why would a slave be happy with this circumstance? Thorfinn understood that coming to this farm saved him. The people there were kind to him and refused to give up on him. Their kindness helped him restore some hope in his life. His life was nothing but constant hell before. He not only feels indebted to Ketil and his people, but is grateful for the opportunity to transform himself. He wants to return the kindness that was shown to him. As Thorfinn approaches Canut's camp, he pleads with Drott, one of the Yom's Vikings, to speak with the king. Thorfinn could have easily taken Drott in a fight, proving that he was in fact who he says he is, son of Thors, former king's guard to Canute himself. But it would be more senseless violence when there is a better way, even if he has to endure some pain alone. Thorfinn realized this time that the gain isn't worth the cost, so instead, he strikes a deal. Take 100 punches without striking back or dying, and they will let him see the king. As the last punch is thrown by an exhausted Drott, Canut's men are bewildered by the fact that Thorfinn never struck back once, even though they are his quote-unquote enemies. But that's where the crux of his philosophy is. Thorfinn states, he has a lot of powerful quotes this season, specifically in the last couple of episodes, but he states,
和平交渉の相手をぶん殴ってりゃ世話ねえぜ。あんた方とは今日会ったばかりだ。お互いのことは何も知らねえ。何の恨みもねえ。なんで俺たちが殴り合わなきゃいけねえんだ。バカバカしい。
He points out that the war is between Canute and Ketil while reminding everyone there, in this profound moment, that not only are they not his enemies, that he has no enemies. This literally stuns everyone around him. Speaking with Canute, though, will be an entirely different challenge for him. Canute is not the type of person to inflict violence personally, so it will be a battle of wits, a battle of philosophies. However, Thorfinn isn't the only one who has changed since they last saw each other. Canute's become a warmonger, killing his way to dominance over 2 different kingdoms, even going as far as poisoning his own brother so he could become the king of Denmark. The power and bravado has gone to his head. He deems his mission one of biblical proportions. His arrogance is straight up palpable. At the same time, though, he understands his hypocrisy. He knows his actions are one of sin, but he deems it as a means to an end. If God won't step in and save humanity's souls from a life of debauchery and bloodshed, then he must amass enough power to do it himself. He's deluded himself into some sort of savior. Einar is the first to step in and point out how idiotic it is to save humanity's soul by senselessly killing and pillaging. It makes no sense. What about the innocent people he kills to achieve his goal? What about their souls, their families? It's counterintuitive at best. As Canute threatens Thorfinn with his men, expecting him to react with violence, Thorfinn stuns Canute by just saying he'll just run away. Thorfinn knows he has no ground to stand on to criticize Canute's dream, and while he could probably kill Canute here and now, that doesn't stop the next king from stepping into power and inflicting the same suffering onto others. As Thorfinn begins to walk away, Canute tells him that he's an exceptional warrior and that there are other ways to achieve his goal. He's trying to bait him into violence, but Thorfinn has grown long past that. His inaction causes Canute to burst out in laughter. He can't begin to comprehend that Thorfinn doesn't have some ulterior motive, some way to connive his way into getting what he wants. Canute becoming king changed how not only he interacts with people, but how people interact with him. They either plead for the things they want or scheme against him. He's just not used to this honesty. He's bewildered by the fact Thorfinn just came to simply ask him to leave. But more than that, he's overjoyed that Vikings can produce someone like Thorfinn. He sees the beauty in Thorfinn's personality, in his philosophy. Canute challenges Thorfinn's claim of running away. What if Canute's reach expands to the place Thorfinn runs to? Thorfinn retorts by saying he'll just run away again and keep running until he has no place to run to. He wants to create a peaceful place beyond Canute's reach, beyond any king's reach. I will point out a moment here that I found quite interesting. As Canute and Thorfinn are conversing, Thorfinn says he wants to create a world for the people who don't fit in Canute's mission. Thorfinn points out that his power is so much less than Canute's, and that Canute needs to try harder at being better so he doesn't create more work for him. I don't know why, but the way he crossed his arms and the way he delivered that line reminded me so much of Askeladd. Canute noticed it too and says, "Who do you take after?" as if pointing out the same thing I mentioned. Yes, most of Thorfinn's philosophy was inherited from his father, but a lot of his mannerisms came from Askeladd, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Thorfinn was 6 when his father died, and 18 when Askeladd died. So for 12 years, double the amount of time he had with his father, Askeladd was his mentor father figure. A fucked up father figure, but one all the same. Thorfinn was successful in his debate with Canute, and Canute just leaves. It was truly that simple. But Canute's mind was being bogged down by some self-imposed divine mission that muddied the waters to the point he couldn't even see up from down anymore. As I stated before, life is rarely black or white. Thorfinn's journey from revenge-stricken maniac to embracing true stoicism is a roller coaster of emotions. He is easily my favorite anime protagonist. Not because he can nuke a whole planet or power level his way into astronomical proportions, but because he signifies what it means to grow as a human. That's the reason I love Vinland Saga so much. We watch a boy turn into a murderous, rampaging teen to eventually grow his way into a functioning, emotionally intelligent adult. The dichotomy from violence to pacifist, and then eventually landing somewhere in between, is something I think a lot of us can learn from. I said it before, and I'll say it again. When someone has wronged you, you have a choice. You can choose to perpetuate the same suffering back onto them, and they you, and so on for all eternity. Or you can take the higher road. Realize making someone else's life miserable in the same way that they made yours is rarely a viable solution. Life is full of grays. My name is Patraxis, and if you made it this far, I thank you for your time and going on this journey with me. I would also appreciate if you could like and subscribe, as it helps the channel grow. Thorfinn's struggles are something I really resonated with, so this one was a little personal, a little close to the chest for me. I hope you embrace the message Vinland Saga tries to teach, and afford a little grace to yourself and the people around you. Have a good day.